Hello, everybody. This is Barry Johnson. Welcome back to another edition of Studio Talk. Today, we're going to talk about converters in the year 2021. You know, there was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, where if you really wanted to capture your audio in a way that would represent you in a way you would want to be represented, converters are one of the first things you looked at. It was one of the first things in your studio you were considering upgrading. Because if I go back even 10 years ago, the difference between entry-level converters, semi-pro converters, and professional converters was vastly different. Basically, the majority of the entry-level beginner converters were crap back then by today's standards, complete crap. Then when you got into the semi-pro, what you started getting into there is you almost felt like a blanket was taken off of your studio monitors. Everything was so much clearer. Separation was so much more succinct. Panning was wider and bigger and had a much greater effect. You know, the converters made a huge difference. And then when you got into the professional converters, at that point, you're taking a step up in converter quality, but mostly what you're doing at that point was getting into better and higher quality clocking. Clocking used to play a very critical part in home studios, and especially if you're at the semi-pro stage of that, because you would typically need to buy a separate clock along with your converter. So let's say you're using a couple of Apogee Rosetta 800s, and then you'd buy a Big Ben clock and clock all of those to it. If you were in a Pro Tools HD system, you know, you would oftentimes go for the Big Ben clock, which is its own separate 19-inch rack unit that you would use to clock all of your devices together and get a more accurate clock amongst your multiple devices. Well, today clocking has improved dramatically, and the quality of converters that you can get today have improved dramatically. In my opinion, no longer is there this huge, very distinguishable difference between even your, I won't go as far as to say entry level, but let's say you're mid-grade, when you're looking at converters in the $700 to $800 range. I'll call that mid-grade. When you get into semi-pro, you're getting into the $1,500 to $2,500 category. And then when you're getting into pro, you're at the 4,000 plus typically. Now, those numbers aren't written hard in stone or anything like that. Those are just generalizations, I should say. And so, you know, when you think about what you can get with PreSonus used to be considered complete junk. Their converters were just junk. Today, they do a pretty good job. I think they do a pretty good job. And I think your average person sitting at home is perfectly fine with that level of conversion. Now, there's more to an interface than just the analog to digital and the digital to analog converters. That at its very basis is the foundation, let's call it, of the interface. What you start getting into after that that make them more expensive. You know, for example, if you're going, I think what's it called, a PreSonus Quantum or some of the Motu boxes, like I don't know what version the 828's at right now, but about 5 or 6 years ago, Motu really amped up their game and really came out with some fantastic freaking converters for the price. Really, really, really good. And there's so many out there. Antelope makes some great ones that you can get into in that price range. And the converters are all solid across the board. So when you're looking at, in my opinion, when you're looking at spending more money to invest in a more expensive interface, I don't think converters today, the quality of that conversion is necessarily on topic. Scrote's getting a little scratchy. I'm going to get a drink. If you watch my videos, you know I keep this stuff in there. So, because I'm having this conversation as if you and I are having a conversation one-on-one. Now, it wasn't that long ago. You know, everybody likes the Universal Audio Apollo series, and they're first and almost second. Their first generation, the analog to digital and the digital analog converters were just mediocre. They were just kind of meh. not that good. Okay. And then the second incarnation, the analog to digital converters got a lot better, but the digital to analog was not as good as their analog to digital. Now, their more recent Apollo series units are very, very, very good. And so why do I bring that up? Well, that just shows we haven't been that far removed from the level of conversion that most of you are probably used to experiencing out there today. So you asked me, hey, Barry, so help me understand if I've got an interface, and let's say it's it's in the $700-800 range. Why in the world would I want to invest more? And let's say that semi-pro, that mid-grade, and why would I want to invest more into the $1,500 to $2,000 range? And I'm going to tell you why. Some of it has to do with your method of getting data in and out, whether you're using USB, USB-C, USB 3.2, I think, or 3.1, Thunderbolt, old FireWire. You don't really see that anymore. A lot of those protocols are going to have a difference in how low you can keep your buffer while you're tracking. So that's one thing to consider. Next is going to be expandability. And that's your ability to potentially get into a Dante world or an AVB world later on for some other cool technology. You'll start seeing some of that. The expanded digital I/O that happens in there, whether that is multiple ADAT, light pipe ins and outs, as well as SPDIF, AES, and some of those things where you get that expandability. Oftentimes when you're getting into a more expensive unit, you can just add a second one and it kind of works flawlessly and they all clock well together. So there's some of the features you're getting into there. Now, the next and probably biggest thing ultimately, now if we're comparing an apples to apples, let's say an 8-channel interface to an 8-channel interface, you're oftentimes going to get much, much better microphone preamps in a more expensive interface. And so you're actually spending more for a little bit of that. And then, of course, you're getting rock solid drivers by a well-known company who can do it. What are some companies out there that are known for having the most stable interfaces really for a very, very long time? I think at the top of that list has to be RME. That is without a question. RME, Metric Halo, always very, very, very solid converters, solid clocking, solid everything across the board. You cannot go wrong when you're buying RME interfaces. They're worth every penny they charge, in my opinion. But they're not the only ones out there. There are other people that make great interfaces too. You've got Apogee. For the longest time, Apogee kind of dominated the higher end side of converters. And I would say they still have a strong foothold, but you look at the most recent Apogee Ensemble, and that thing is killer. That thing is killer. It doesn't have some of the features, some of the other expandability options that you're going to get with the equivalent of RME or some others, but you're going to get rock solid integration within your DAW. You're going to be able to maintain a low buffer because it's able to get the ones and zeros in and out of the interface from analog to digital and digital to analog back and again into your DAW. So these things are going to play a key role. Now, when you get above that, then you start getting into things that the majority of people like you and me, for the most part, the vast majority of people just simply don't need. And that's when you're getting into, Apogee Symphony, some of those, Avid's MTRX, I think that's what it's called. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Some of those things that work in a Pro Tools HDX environment, most of you are simply just not going to have a need for that. Some of those things are in multiple expandability to be able to get, if you're recording a symphony or something like that, and you need to be able to put a bunch of them together. I tell you, one of the sleepers out there for me that I think really hits the nail on head on all fronts as far as semi-professional / professional interfaces these days is Focusrite. Their AD16, the Red 16 line. Yeah, the Red 16 line, the Red 8 line, the Red 8 Pre. Those preamps are freaking phenomenal, and you really get a lot of bang for your buck. You get all the digital ins and outs. You get Dante with it. One day I'll do a video on Dante and kind of break that down and explain why that is the future of that is really where it's going for many of us, especially if you're in a situation beyond just tracking yourself in your home studio and you need to be able to do some other things. Dante is really, really, really killer, fairly inexpensive to set up compared to AVB, but they're both similar types of protocols, although they operate differently and require different things setting those up. So if you're the bottom line is if you're sitting in your studio and you're happy with the conversion that you've got and your computer and a combination of your interface is able to get those ones and zeros in and out of there so you can still record at a low buffer, be happy with the interface you've got. I don't think you need to look to upgrade. You shouldn't be upgrading your interface until you know you're getting something that you need that will help you achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve. Put that money elsewhere. You know, you can get a lot for not a lot of money in the big scheme of things. Now, if you're sitting there with an entry-level $200 interface or something, just get going. And everybody's been there, including me. We've all been there when that was the most we could afford and it did what we needed it to do. You know, I think that's perfectly fine. But I think you will find that later on, if you get into that $800-ish, $800 to $1,200 price range, you're going to see a lot of things stepping up across the board and you're going to notice a difference. It's not going to be as big of a difference as it was 8 to 12 years ago, but today it's going to be a noticeable difference across the board from just rock solid reliability and flawless integration with your DAW, whichever one you may choose. So think long and hard before you go trying to lust after that next converter because it looks cool and you love all the features, but the reality is you got to ask yourself, are you really even going to use that stuff? You know, I recently downgraded from 24, was it 16 and 22 ins and outs in my studio. I'm back down to 8 in and out or 8 and 10 out because it has its own separate monitor connections on it that don't eat up part of the regular IO on it. But I would even argue that the interface that I have, which is a Pro Tools Carbon, is way more than what I need. And I probably did that more just because I can than just because I should. Because if I had to, actually, the smart decision would have been to go buy a Focusrite 16 line because that would have made the most sense for me. But I didn't do that. So, okay, maybe I'll change my mind later on and sell it. So think about this, you know, guys and gals out there, if you've got some experience with converters, if you felt like you've bumped up to what you thought was the next level and it was really, you really thought it was going to be a game changer for you, and then ask yourself, was it really a game changer for you? And put that down in the comment section. Let some other people learn from our mistakes, your mistakes. Or you may find that, hey, you invested and you bumped up to this converter and this is what it did for you. It opened up, it felt like it opened up your ears. It opened up your workflow. It made such a difference. Okay, put that down there, you know. But you know, the need to spend a ton of money on converters these days, on trying to up the game on the quality of the conversion, especially considering most people are going to listen to it in a set of headphones. If and when whatever you do actually gets out in there to some type of marketable environment, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, or all the other streaming sites out there that you can upload your songs to and hopefully sell some of them and do whatever it is you're trying to do with them. But you know, these things ultimately, as of today, now with lossless and some other things that's going on with audio right now, I think we're going to see the quality of streaming music increase. But still, most people are going to listen to it in a pair of AirPods or something like that, or headphones. And so I just don't think it matters as much. I think we'd all be surprised if we actually found a lot of the recordings that we love, and even the modern ones out today. I think they were probably not recorded on the level of converters that you actually thought they were. Many of them are probably still recorded on DigiDesign 192s. It wouldn't surprise me. So again, think about that. Converters is the topic subject today. And so I would ask that if you like the content I talk about on this channel, I ask you go take a look at some of my other videos, see if you find any of those kind of compelling to watch. I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell. Just takes you a second to do so, but it helps me grow the channel, and I'd really appreciate that. You know, overwhelmingly, like most people out there on YouTube, you know, I think over 90% of my viewers are not subscribers. And so I appreciate all the viewers, and I appreciate how fortunate and how blessed I've been to be able to get the viewers I've gotten so far. I'm a little bit taken back by it, to be honest with you. It makes me a little nervous because I got to keep this content up, and I hope to be able to continue to do that for all you people. So until next time, I hope all of you have a great day.